Hello and welcome to MoreZone, everything Call of Duty, Warzone and more. My name is Bryce and I'll be bringing you through this episode. But before we get into our wonderful segments this week, here's a teaser of what's coming up. We have MoreZone news, bringing you everything the latest in Warzone. We have our top 5 players returning once again. Our Loadout Highlight with MrDalekJD. We go off the meta with the Fennec. And we visit prison for our map highlight. As you can see, plenty to wait for in the next 20 minutes, but let's get straight into our first segment then. What's been happening this week in Call of Duty Warzone? It's MoreZone news. This week in the news, quads has been replaced by realism quads. Same game, ever so slightly different way to play it, just no HUD, with the same core Warzone gameplay. I know I've been trying it out a little bit. Sometimes it can be a bit tricky to coordinate, but it's still a great game to play. In a CDL Paris homestand this week, Mutineers took away another victory, actually finishing up the final in a ridiculous fashion, completely dominating FaZe Atlanta and going back-to-back in tournaments for them. The Florida Mutineers look unbeatable at this point in the season. Warzone weekend took place at CDL Paris as well. This time it was solos. 60 pro players and CDL staff members jumped into Verdansk to battle it out for the top prize. The interesting thing about this week actually was that Rambo Ray won, the head coach for the Dallas Empire, and he did it using a truck to run over pro players, only getting himself 2 damage at the end and 3 kills. And I can genuinely recommend going and watching this VOD because it is genuinely hilarious how much fun he is having defeating the best players in the world using only a truck. Biggest news this week in Warzone is Joe Seacott confirming weapon tuning coming to Warzone. We can expect to see the end of the Growl meta in just a short while, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. Well, there you go, the news this week from everything Call of Duty Warzone, and we move on from the news to our best clips. If you do want to submit a clip, you can do. Just submit a Twitch clip or a YouTube link to either our Reddit, which is MoreZone, or our Twitter, which is the MoreZone, and submit them all through the week for a chance to win 2,400 COD points. Well, without any further delay, here's our top 5 clips. Coming in at number 5 this week, Young Jeezy gets the first shots down with the LMG and then somehow turns into a jackrabbit to get the second, and it's a shutdown in a very unconventional way. Number 4, we have Nonny Nutcase, and he does have his team in the circle. It's very, very late game, and they are waiting for the circle to close in. Seeing snipers down on the rock, he figures out a solution that means he's going to get a team wipe with just one press of the button. Sees the sniper's no good, puts it down, and watches the players scramble an incoming precision airstrike, and that's all he needed to do for that clip. Faced with a return from the gulag, he tries to help his friend out on this roof, but his friend does go down. And normally people would bail here, but not Golden Ghost. Golden Ghost goes for this with the pistol, managing to take down one player. See the second reviving, goes for the melee as well, and that is an entire team wipe. In at number 2, Reese, FC96. This is a long clip for good reason. Late game, still a lot of players left in this one, 5 teams. He starts to rack up the kills. That's another team wipe going down. Now trying to move in. We're actually at the point of the game in the final circle. There are 4 teams left and the circle is now moving. He identifies there is a player on this roof, sees the barrel, waits patiently in the open, eventually gets this kill, takes it down. A second player comes off the roof. Doesn't matter. Enough bullets in the clip to get that one as well. Still players left all over the place. He's looking for them desperately as he moves with the gas, picks up another player, another one coming from the gas that he manages to blue but not quite take out. His teammate eventually going down, gets that kill at the same time, another down going for him, and now he's all alone. Still, so many players left here. 3 teams and 6 other players are waiting for him. Gets his plates back in. And now he waits. With the gas movement, he has to time this correctly. Other players will be moving as well. Sees a player there. That's an elimination of a player he downed earlier. And he gets into a little bit of a safe space here. Just waiting. Now only 3 other players remain. Him and a team of 3 for the win. Finds one out in the open, instantly taking it down. He decides to get up there, but a player challenges him, turns, burns, and takes him down. Last player there, and he gets the win. Our number 1 clip this week comes from A Hazy as he goes to work on the roof of Superstore. Lands with only the standard pistol, of course, at the start of the game, but doesn't matter. Continues to put it to work as he drops player after player, just not missing whenever he is challenged, and continues to rack up kills. Now, as he swoops around, picks up this player, he does start to take a little bit of damage. No health left onto this one, but it doesn't matter. Goes for the challenge, gets the elimination. That's a team wipe, and that's our clip. Another great selection of clips from our community. And of course, if you do want to get involved, make sure to submit those clips to either our Twitter, the MoreZone, or Reddit r/MoreZone. And you have a chance to win 2,400 COD points every single week. Well, from great clips to great people, we are now going to go into our Loadout Highlight. This week, we talk to YouTuber extraordinaire, MrDalekJD. All right, well, thank you for joining us, John. How are you?
I am very good, mate. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Thanks for coming on. All right, let's jump straight into your loadout. So it looks like you're going full meta with this one.
Okay, yeah, absolutely full meta. It's the only way to go.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are running it at the moment. But let's jump straight into your Growl class. You know, it's the meta gun at the moment. Now, most of these things very standard across most of them. The VLK site, though, we see people use it, some people don't use it. Why are you for that site?
So before I swapped it out for the tac laser, and most of the time you wouldn't need an optic on this gun because it's just an absolute zero recoil god. But there was a few occasions where you just don't quite get the hits on the enemies that you know you should. Like you just miss it. And with that 3 times optic, it's enough where in most situations you can use that optic and you're not gonna have any like negatives. Like if it's close quarters, it's fine. If it's from a far distance, it gives you that additional sight to be able to make sure every bullet you shoot is pinpoint accurate.
Okay, yeah, I like that. I haven't run a lot of it myself, but I'll have to give it a go. But I mean, the Growl is such a powerful weapon in the current kind of format of this game, right? Low recoil, high rate of fire, basically good damage. Is there any reason you see anybody running anything else?
The only reason I could see anyone running anything else is if in a few weeks' time, Infinity Ward are like, no more Growl, we're going to nerf it. Or I guess it comes down to personal preference. Because when I started playing Warzone, I was always an M4 guy. I saw people using the Growl all the time. And it was a mix of, I didn't have the right attachments because I didn't use it enough. And also I felt like the M4 was just so much easier for any kind of player to be able to pick it up and do well in Warzone. But with the Growl, you need to play with it for a while to be able to get all those amazing attachments. And I guess at the time, the M4 was just, you know, the god gun. Everyone had everything unlocked for it. So it was like, we'll just go with that. But the only reason I could ever see the Growl not being the go-to gun is if Infinity Ward suddenly like, we're going to need to switch things up a little bit. But I think whenever that does happen, which is inevitable, I'm actually looking forward to see how that changes things up because it will make gunfights drastically different. Like you're gonna have some moments where you're gonna have to question what exactly are they using because it's gonna just mix things up. It's gonna be a lot of fun. But until they do that, I'm just gonna keep going.
No problem at all. Let's talk about the other half of that one then. Let's talk about the MP5 that comes with it, because everything that the Growl can do well, the MP5 has its own niche in this one, and this is a very meta setup as well. The same run-up I use. Monolithic integral suppressor, because it changes both your barrel and your suppressor. Your tac laser, your 45-round mag, your Merc foregrip, and your F-Tech collapsible slot. What makes this the go-to secondary for you?
The thing that makes this a go-to secondary is the fact that combination of attachments, you have an amazing amount of ammo. So if there's any moments where you know, close quarters teams are up against you, you have so much ammo, you can take out so many of these enemies without having to like sweat. Like you don't even need to think about it. And also the range on the MP5 of all those attachments is nuts as well. Like we're talking, you can be on one side of a rooftop, they can be on the other, and there's still enough range there that you can just pepper them with this gun, and before they have a chance to react, they're already knocked. It's as easy as that. And I think just with all those attachments as well, it makes you such a mobile speed demon as well. You combine that with some of the perks that increase your movement speed, and you're just sprinting towards these enemies, and the next thing you know is team wipe. It's as simple as that. It's a deadly combination.
I completely agree. I often like switching to it as soon as I get into any sort of close combat as well, because just the movement is so good. Let's talk a little bit about your perks then, John. What are you like commonly running in Warzone?
When Warzone first came out until just recently, I was just very set in my ways about having cold-blooded, ghost, and also amped. And I think amp stayed as an absolute consistent. Ghost has stayed as a consistent, but I realized over time that cold-blooded wasn't really a necessary perk to run. And when you do have the MP5 and Growl combined, you want that speed. Like as you play Warzone, like since the release, I've learned, you know, is obviously a lot of other players do it now, but I had no idea about the sprint cancel and how integral double time is with that sprint cancel. Like if you run MP5 and you use that perk and you do those movements, like you are going to be Speedy Gonzalez around the map. And when you need to outrun gas, like that's why you need to run double time and have an SMG like the MP5.
And that makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense to me. Like I said, it's one of these ones where the game has evolved subtly, right? Like I feel like there's a lot less thermals in Warzone at the moment. Like a lot of people aren't running
definitely. Them. Yeah, I was running thermal snipers all day, every day when the game first came out, and it's just always that very slow gameplay of sitting on a roof, just eyeing up people running from the storm or even in the distance. But now it's like the meta is very different, and it's all about where can I go to get my next set of kills? Like, what do I need to do to position myself better for the next storm? You know, predicting where teams are coming, and it's just crazy to think like this is what the meta is now. How is it going to change in like 2-3 months from now? It's something you can't predict, but we know it's going to happen, which just makes Warzone even more interesting of a BR to play.
No, I completely agree. I think, you know, with things like the Growl coming into prominence, it really has taken down snipers a peg or two. But let's talk also about your lethal and your tactical, John. What do you like running in those?
Okay, so lethal and tactical, it's been very like 50-50. So I started off with the classic heartbeat sensor, which I feel is still really necessary a lot of the time. And it was Semtex. But ever since then, I feel a lot of people as well have become the gods of C4. Like, like you just need it. There's so many situations where C4 outclasses absolutely every other lethal grenade. There's no reason why you wouldn't run it. If you need to clear out trucks that are driving by, pepper them a little bit, boom, C4. If there's an ATV, boom, C4. If you're storming upstairs, just chuck one a few floors up, boom. Like, it's just so good for practically any situation. But I've been really toying against needing a heartbeat sensor because, you know, everyone gets ghost late game. Late game, the heartbeat sensor is pretty much useless. You don't want to be staring at it because you've got so much else to focus on. So I feel like stuns and the heartbeat are like almost 50-50 balance, but I would say the stun probably creeps a few percent higher as being super necessary late game so that you can just do the plays that you need to do to guarantee that victory.
No, I completely agree. It's a very, like I said, again, that's a very meta thing to run at the moment. And you basically find them everywhere in Warzone now, to the point where it's like, if you really want one, you can just kill somebody and find one. It's basically an instant pickup again.
Exactly. You use your 2 C4s. It's like, oh, you're going to find C4 again later in the game. Like, it's guaranteed.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let's talk about where you like to drop then. Where are you dropping into the dance?
Okay, good question, Bryce. I have a very set place that I drop. When the game first came out, I had no real clue where to go. And I always used to drop like Promenade because there would just be tons of contracts everywhere, lots of multi-floor buildings to find loot. But now I've completely switched it up and I always drop near airport. There's like a bunch of hangars. It's a classic.
That's a meta drop,
exactly. It's a meta drop, right? You've got hangars. You've got like multiple hangars near the back of the airport. As you move further, you've got like 3 or 4. You've got like these buildings where, like, for me, I drop there every game, and there's always enough loot and enough cash that I always get enough for a loadout, no matter what. Like, you don't necessarily have to do any contracts. I know some, like, I play with a totally different group of friends all the time on Warzone, and some prefer to drop like downtown so they can get I don't know, they can get recon contracts, they can do scavs real quick. I'm like, you don't need to do that. You don't need to risk that. Like, drop airport, have some fun, get into some gunfights and win some early gunfights early game, get the cash, get a loadout, and then just rotate from there.
No, 100%.
So that's where I go.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's amazing how much money you can actually get in that area very quickly. And also, you usually get a little bit of a light fight, as I like to call it, maybe 1 or 2 teams in the area. So you have your first initial kills, and you've got your money, and then you kind of rotate anywhere you want.
Exactly, yeah. Like teams, like I always drop in like these. I don't know what exactly to call them. There's like, it's just a multi-floor like building, and it overlooks like hangars and stuff. And there's always teams that go in hangars, then they're running in between hangars, or they just expose themselves. And then you could just find an LMG, mount on a window, and just like, next thing you know, they're gone. You're laughing because you got a team wipe. And then you hear, oh, enemy dropping above you. You're like, oh, they're back for round 2, and you're still looting up. And then at that point, you've got enough money. Go to the fire station. If you need to, get a lorry, drive away, find a buy station, and you're set for the game.
Couldn't agree more. I genuinely couldn't agree more. All right, let's talk about your top tip for Warzone then. What's the advice you're giving to players watching this now?
Ooh, top tips. Top tips, I would say, don't focus on recons, because as much as I think it's a decent idea to know where the zone's closing in, it's not as fun knowing where it's going to close in. Like, in that way, you sort of just play it safe, and you don't really get involved in too much gunfights. I'd definitely say just focus on bounties. Just focus on bounty contracts. That way, it keeps the game fun, keeps the pace going, guaranteed good amount of cash. It's interesting with the most wanted contract that got added in recently, because it's always a bit like, do you take it or do you not? Because if like
such a risk.
Yeah, I know. Because if you're the last player alive and it's up to you to get the rest of your teammates in, it's like, do you grab it, then get in like a helicopter and fly around for 3 minutes just to get some easy cash? Do you post yourself up somewhere that's not obvious at all, just so that, you know, you can let time go away? It's a very interesting like balance. But I'd say bounty contracts, absolutely. Loot up. Just play it safe until you get your loadout. Always go for the overkill loadout first, and wait for that natural drop to come in. Make sure you're counting how many crates are there by that, because then you know how many teams you've got to work with. But just play it safe, play it to the zone, and also be wary as well, because when it gets to that final zone, the zone then moves back out. So you've always got to keep like an environmental awareness on where you are, where you expect players to be, but don't necessarily always go to where they are, because hey, the zone's going to move out again, and you're all going to be in the same position, and it's just going to be a free fall basically. Use that knowledge to your advantage, and hopefully you'll be able to get some more dubs. It's literally all about just playing the environmental space and trying to basically have mind games about where the other players are. That's the best tips I could give.
Those are some great tips, actually. That's a lot of the kind of things that I do normally in it, but some people don't. Some people like to play it a little bit weird. But I do appreciate this, John. Thank you so much for coming on and kind of
having me, mate.
Honestly, taking us through all of the things Warzone that you do, and I appreciate it. And I'll see you soon.
See you soon, Bryce. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Well, there you go. Hopefully, John has taught you something about the way he likes to run Warzone, and maybe a little bit of a meta comp which you can use if you aren't doing so already. But speaking of meta, it's time for us to go off the meta and take a look at something new in Warzone. This week, it's the Fennec. This week in Off the Meta, we are covering the Fennec, a new DLC weapon that dropped with Season 4 and is currently Tier 15 on the Battle Pass. Now, interestingly enough, while this is off the meta, some people will be saying, well, this is the new meta gun. It is exactly, the best gun SMG in the game. Unfortunately, I don't agree. I think that this gun is certainly high tier. It can go toe-to-toe with the MP5, which is where a lot of people are replacing it. This is what I recommend you use on it right now. You've got things like the combination barrel of suppressor and extended barrel, Merc 4 grip, 40 round mags, absolute necessity, and a no stock for a bit extra speed, and the usual tac laser. All these make this a very, very controllable and fast firing SMG to use as a secondary weapon. And I must point that out again. This is a secondary weapon. It is not a primary weapon you should be running on any regular basis. It doesn't have the range you need, it doesn't have the stopping power at range, but it does have an incredibly fast fire rate. it will drop people very, very quickly in those close quarters area. So if you are going to go for an overkill, I can recommend using it. I've been running it myself. I do enjoy it. The only issue this gun has is that it's maybe not as versatile as an MP5. And that's maybe why it's still a little bit off the meta, is that the MP5 is more controllable at range. It can drop people a little bit easier. And you don't, because of its fast fire rate, explode all your bullets in one go. And that's something that the Fennec has kind of going against it right now, is that the fact is you put out so many rounds so quickly and you drop people, is that if you're against 2 or 3, you aren't going to have enough bullets left. Sometimes I find myself shooting one and then I don't really have enough bullets to drop the second guy or finish him. So while it is incredibly dangerous in close combat, it can be a little bit of a problem if you get into a longer gunfight or if you need to continually put bullets down. As you saw in that one clip, 40 rounds, 1 kill, which means I'm going to have to reload between them, which is fine if I can take them on one by one, but in a close quarters, sometimes I'm going to keep challenging. The MP5 is a little bit more consistent in that regard. Saying that, it's a lot of fun. I can genuinely recommend this if you just want a gun for when you get into close quarters and you just want to just absolutely tear someone to bits. The Fennec is ever so slightly off the meta at the moment, but I can see it being used more and more, especially since it's new. People enjoy it, and it does have this great, you know, if you need to absolutely win a gunfight, it will shred through people in the absolute fastest speed possible. It is a gun that is viable all the way through. So, have you been using the Fennec? Let us know what you've been running. Have you been enjoying it on all our social channels? I know I've been enjoying it quite a lot. It's certainly a change of pace and a very fun gun to use. But where could you use it? Well, that's the question we put forward in our map highlight this week as we highlight Prison in the corner of the map. Here it is. Hello and welcome to our map highlight this week. We are going to be looking into the location known as Prison. So, first part of this kind of introduction to Prison is pointing out that it is in not the greatest location on the map. It's kind of isolated by itself, there's not a lot to rotate to, very open grounds around Prison, so bear that in mind if you do choose to drop here. That being said, if you do choose to drop here and it's a drop like this one, which is pretty close overhead, you can expect a very busy time. Sometimes it's worth dropping here if you want to get into a high kill match or just want a good time. It's one of these drops that's very subjective. You don't always want to go here. It's not somewhere I recommend you go every single time. Your drops won't line up. You'll have to glide miles to get to it if you need to. But if it goes over the top, you and a group of friends certainly can have a good time. So, the other part of Prison that intrigues me is it's a difficult location to fight in. What I mean by this is that it has a lot of verticality surrounding an open kill zone right in the middle, and it can be difficult for your teammates to kind of coordinate and try and take down other teams, especially if you don't get the high ground. If you lose the high ground early on in Prison, you're basically fighting an uphill battle, no pun intended, the entire time. There is a significant amount of loot around, but it is going to be spread out across this map, meaning you are going to have to expose yourself if you are trying to get a loadout early. One of the benefits of this is there is usually a helicopter in Prison, as well as a couple of contracts, and sometimes a buy zone, so you can get all the usual essentials you do need. But again, it depends on whether or not you can survive. As you can probably tell in the clip right now, there is actually fights going on in Prison at the moment. But because of the way my squad has dropped, we're all very disjointed and we don't have the high ground. And this is causing us all kinds of problems. This also applies if the circle ends here late game. If it does start to end here late game, you may want to think about trying to get into Prison early and trying to get up high, because you can always jump off. It's the opposite if you get here late and you have to try and rotate around the open grounds. You will be just continually fired from the parapets. And that makes this game very, very difficult sometimes. I think realistically, for me, Prison is one of these locations that I go to if it's necessary. And even then, I try to avoid going in if I'm not there early, because if I lose the high ground, I'm basically going to die, and there's not an awful lot I can do about it. However, if you do feel like going to Prison, there is also the underground section of Prison, which you can enjoy going in and exploring. It's not really going to get into any fights, but it does go all the way down, and if you go outside in the pipe, you can actually find a gulag that has been broken out of and you can kind of have an explore in there. There's nothing too interesting in those areas. I mean, you can hide there if you wish to, but again, it's low ground. You could get found. Prison's an interesting one because it has some good attributes to the fact that because it's at the edge of the map, a lot of people may drop here, but because it's at the edge of the map, it won't always be the case. So enjoy Prison while you're there, but don't make it regular. Well, Prison this week, and of course it is one of those locations on the map that's a bit Marmite-like. You either love it or you hate it, but let us know what you feel either way. That has been MoreZone for this week. Feel free to follow us on the socials. Reminder to submit your top 5 clips. I hope you've enjoyed. And one last thing. If you have been watching this episode, you may have noticed my t-shirt. A rather lovely Warzone t-shirt. We are going to be having from next week competitions to give away some wonderful Warzone themed goodies. So keep an eye out for that. We'll be announcing details during the week and next episode. I hope you've enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.
There's one shot, not a future before.